had extended an invitation that appeared straightforward, but was actually laden with the weight of unspoken emotions. A gentle tap on the heart, rather than the door. Who is the recipient? Erov's supervisor. A man who exuded a quiet gravity that rendered even silence seem like a tempest. My reflection merged with the shimmering skyline outside as I stood alone near the tall glass partition of my Manhattan penthouse that evening. Each glint of the city lights echoed the pain I had interred deep within, as if they were silent tears falling from an unseen sky. I may have discovered solace in the rhythmic stillness of my own breath, rather than in the companionship of others. On the marble counter, a glass of crimson wine was left unattended, its hue evoking forbidden emotions. I had refrained from sipping, not out of a sense of denial, but rather out of apprehension that the moment the warmth passed down my esophagus, I would dissolve with it. I was apprehensive about the reality that lay beneath the surface of the glass. Another business trip, another stretch of lonely hours, another night in which our shared life felt more like a faded memory than a living bond, and Orav, my spouse, had once again departed. The true separation was far more intimate, a widening canyon between hearts that once beat in synchrony, despite the fact that distance could be measured in miles. Orav and I were once engulfed by a love that was so vivid that it appeared as a pyrotechnic against a velvet night sky. We dreamed, we murmured secrets into each other's skin, and we constructed a world in which only we existed. However, at this time, our lives were now reduced to superficial conversations and robotic communications. A single plate, a silence room, and the dull clink of cutlery against porcelain had transformed dinner into a solitary ritual. I yearned for the fleeting warmth that once existed between us, for touch and for meaning. Oh, how I longed! I attempted to communicate with him by sending lengthy communications. I inquired about his days, his thoughts, and his aspirations. However, the void absorbed each syllable. I could sense my identity gradually dissolving, the vibrant woman I was once becoming an unfamiliar entity. That evening, I proceeded to pour the wine, observing the deep red vortex as if it were a secret that was awaiting to be revealed. The city's murmur was accompanied by a siren's call to an entity that declined to be identified. I was unable to fall asleep. The apartment's atmosphere was excessively tranquil, replete with inquiries that remained unresolved. Then the doorbell rang. It was not anticipated that anyone would arrive. As I approached the door, a peculiar furrow appeared between my eyebrows. I opened it, and there he was. Manager of Vihanarov. His presence was both bold and restrained, as his eyes shone with a calm fire, and he was cloaked in a long dark coat. His hair was slightly tousled. He apologized for the hour, his voice resonant and velvety smooth. Orav requested that I retrieve the files he had abandoned. I nodded, my voice obscured by my inquiry. Before brief visits, fleeting glimpses, and polite conversation, Vihan had been present. However, tonight there was a change in the atmosphere. There was a pause before the moment, a faint hint of an unspoken subject. He entered the room, removed his coat, and delicately placed it on the back of the chair. The untouched wineglass on the counter caught his attention, and he then turned his gaze toward me. The silence was characterized by a persistent electric charge. He inquired, not in jest, but with sincere inquiry, "How do you endure such silence?" I endeavored to dismiss it. I replied, "You will become accustomed to it," but the deception was accurate. Vihan moved in so close that the air between us felt like static, but not too close. He returned my gaze after meticulously tracing the file's edge with his fingertips. He said gently, "You should not be required to." I refrained from responding. I was unable to. I experienced a faint sensation of the floor beneath me disintegrating. The file was closed by him. Does he choose not to see you, or does he not see you? My palms were trembling. The wine beckoned to me, but I refrained from accepting it. This was not due to a lack of desire, but rather a lack of confidence in my ability to handle it. Vihan was not a man who evaded the truth, but there are certain truths that I whispered that are simpler to leave unsaid. His voice was subdued. Subsequently, why do I perceive that you have already initiated the delivery of them? I withdrew. I should have terminated the conversation and established a buffer zone. Nevertheless, I refrained from doing so, as a part of me was beginning to awaken, not to recover but to awaken. Vihan stood and collected the file, but he halted as he approached the door. He murmured, "Consider what you truly require as opposed to what you have been instructed to accept." Afterward, he departed. I was unable to breathe correctly after he left. His words expanded within my chest like vines in the days that followed. Arev's absence was due to the extension of his trip. The duration of my nights increased and my restlessness became intolerable. And Vihan returned. He reappeared unannounced one evening, but he was not unwelcome. His gaze was not hungry, rather it was searching. I discovered him observing me from the kitchen doorway. "Meher, what is the source of your apprehension?" he inquired. I held my wineglass with apprehension. I acknowledged that I was losing myself. He advanced, retrieved the glass from me, and placed it aside. "Next, refrain from doing so," he advised, "but do not also deny your emotions." His kiss was not violent or sudden. Rather, it was a gradual unraveling, a gentle tearing away of everything I had been attempting to conceal. Additionally, I permitted it to transpire. Our bodies intertwined in a night that redefined me, not because I desired betrayal, but because I sought existence. We became one. The damage was disclosed by the morning light. While I gazed at the ceiling, my heart was in ruins. Vihan slept peacefully beside me. I quietly slipped from the bed. Feeling guilt adhered to me like a second skin. I was unable to revert to the previous state as something had changed. And then Irv arrived home earlier than anticipated. That evening he stood before me, simultaneously familiar and foreign. His eyes scrutinized me attentively, and I could sense the change in him as well. Something within him had reawakened a sensitivity that had been quiescent for an extended period. He mumbled, "You have made a change." I endeavored to refute it, however, my silence betrayed me. I endeavored to maintain an air of deception as his gaze remained fixed on me for an extended period of time during dinner. However, I was aware that he was aware of something. Numerous days transpired. Finally, one evening, I entered the living room and observed an envelope on the table. Images. Undeniable, distant, and blurry. Vihan. My spirit plummeted. Arev's expression was unintelligible. He handed me the envelope without speaking, our digits briefly touching. That contact was more painful than a slap. His voice cracked as he said, "I trusted you. I never imagined that I would need to query you." I desired to collapse onto my knees. My desire was to scream, weep, and provide an explanation. However, there was no explanation that could eradicate the truth. He retreated, his voice now resolute. "My attorney will contact you." Afterward, he abruptly exited our lives. I sat by the window a month later, holding divorce papers in my hand. I had transformed beyond recognition while the skyline remained unchanged. Vihan vanished shortly thereafter. No calls, no messages. For him it was a moment, while for me it was a lifetime. I examined myself in the mirror. Meher was no longer the woman I encountered. She was the remnant of what was left when desire transformed into devastation and silence transformed into a cemetery for love. Like what you heard. There's plenty more heartbreak and secrets to come. Hit like, subscribe, and stay curious with Tangled Truths.